James Brown walked into the rehearsal studio at NBC and saw Elvis Presley practicing the exact footwork sequence Brown had invented 3 years earlier. Not similar moves, not inspired by, exactly the same: the spin, the drop, the slide, the recovery. Elvis didn't notice Brown standing in the doorway, didn't see him watching for a full minute as the king of rock and roll rehearsed moves he'd stolen from the godfather of soul. When Elvis finally looked up and saw Brown's face, he froze mid-spin. What happened in the next 20 minutes became one of the most important conversations in music history, a confrontation about respect, originality, and the invisible line between inspiration and theft that forever changed how both men understood their place in the evolution of American music. It was October 1968 at NBC Studios in Burbank, California. Elvis was preparing for his comeback special, the television event that would resurrect his career after years of mediocre movies and declining relevance. The special was going to be raw, dangerous, Elvis at his most primal, leather-clad, sweating, performing like his life depended on it. Because in many ways, it did. James Brown was at NBC to tape an appearance on a variety show. He'd finished his segment early and was wandering the hallways, killing time before his flight back to New York, when he heard music coming from Studio A. The door was slightly open. Brown glanced in and saw Elvis Presley, alone except for a choreographer, practicing moves in front of a wall of mirrors. Brown almost kept walking. He and Elvis had met a few times at industry events, exchanged pleasantries, maintained the professional courtesy that stars showed each other. They operated in different worlds. Elvis in the white mainstream, Brown in the black music scene that the mainstream pretended didn't exist while stealing everything it created. But something made Brown stop. Something about the way Elvis was moving looked familiar, very familiar. Brown stepped into the doorway and watched. His heart rate picked up. Something about the movement felt disturbingly familiar. Elvis was working on a sequence: start center stage, quick shuffle step left, spin 360 degrees, drop into a half split, slide forward on one knee, pop back up with a hip thrust, freeze with one arm extended. Brown's stomach dropped. He knew that sequence. He'd created it. The specific rhythm of the shuffle, the timing of the spin, the angle of the split, the speed of the slide, the explosive pop-up, even the exact positioning of that final freeze. It had happened in 1965 at the Royal Peacock in Atlanta during Papa's Got a Brand New Bag. The sequence had come out of him fully formed. The crowd erupted. People were on their feet screaming. Brown had refined it since, practiced it everywhere, made it signature. His band knew when it was coming. His audiences waited for it. It was uniquely, undeniably his. And here was Elvis Presley, practicing it like it was his own creation. Brown watched for another 30 seconds. Elvis ran through the sequence again. Same moves, same rhythm, same everything. The choreographer was making notes, suggesting tiny adjustments, but the core sequence was identical to what Brown had created. Brown stepped fully into the studio. His footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor. Elvis stopped mid-movement. His eyes went to the mirror, saw Brown's reflection, then turned to face him directly. The choreographer, a thin man in his 30s named Michael, looked confused. "James," Elvis said. His voice was friendly but cautious. "Didn't know you were in the building." "I'm taping down the hall," Brown said. He kept his voice neutral. "Heard music. Thought I'd see who was working." "Yeah, we're prepping for the comeback special. Going to be on NBC in December. Big event." "I heard about it. Everyone's talking about it. Elvis Presley returning to his roots. Raw performances. Real danger." "That's the idea." Brown gestured toward the space where Elvis had been dancing. "What were you working on just now?" Elvis glanced at the choreographer, then back at Brown. "Just a sequence. Something we're putting together for one of the numbers." "Can I see it again?" "What?" "The sequence. I'd like to see it again." Elvis hesitated. He could see something in Brown's expression, something that suggested this wasn't a casual request. Sure. Michael, can you cue the music? The music started. Elvis ran through the sequence again. Shuffle, spin, split, slide, pop, freeze, perfect execution, exactly like Brown's original. When it finished, Brown applauded slowly. That's good, really good. Where'd you come up with that? Michael and I worked it out. Why? Brown looked at the choreographer. Michael, is it? Did you work that out? Or did you see me perform it and suggest it to Elvis? Michael's face went pale. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. That sequence, every single move in it, I created it. I've been performing it for 3 years, and now here's Elvis, rehearsing it for his big comeback special, pretending it's original choreography. Elvis held up his hands. Whoa, hold on. Nobody's pretending anything. If Michael pulled inspiration from inspiration, Brown's voice got harder. There's a difference between inspiration and copying. Inspiration is when you see someone do something and it makes you think of your own thing. Copying is when you see someone do something and you just take it. What I just watched is copying. James, I think you're overreacting. Let me ask you something, Elvis. If I went on national television next month and performed one of your signature moves, let's say the hip swivel you're famous for, and I didn't credit you, didn't acknowledge where it came from, just did it like I invented it, how would you feel? Elvis was quiet. I'll tell you how you'd feel, Brown continued. You'd feel stolen from. You'd feel like I took something you created and claimed it as my own. You'd feel disrespected. Look, if we accidentally use something similar to what you do, we can change it. It's not similar, Elvis. It's identical, and it's not an accident. Your choreographer saw me perform it, knew it would work for you, and lifted it wholesale. And you're about to perform it on national television for millions of people, most of whom will never know it came from me, most of whom don't even know who I am. Come on, James. Everyone knows who you are. Everyone in our world knows who I am. That's going to reach millions of white Americans who've never heard of James Brown, never seen me perform, never bought one of my records. And when they see you do that move, they're going to think you created it. They're going to add it to the list of reasons why Elvis Presley is a genius. And I'll just be the guy who did it first, in front of audiences that white America never bothered to watch. Michael spoke up, his voice defensive. Mr. Brown, in choreography, everyone borrows from everyone. It's how dance evolves. Nothing is completely original. Don't give me that, Brown said. There's borrowing and there's stealing. Borrowing is when you take an idea and make it your own. Stealing is when you take the exact thing and pretend you came up with it. This is stealing. Elvis dismissed the choreographer with a wave. Michael, give us a minute. Michael left quickly, grateful to escape. Elvis and Brown stood alone in the studio, facing each other. Cards on the table. You're right. That's your move. Michael saw you perform it last year in Memphis. He thought it would work for the special. I didn't know where it came from. I just learned what he taught me. And now that you know, now that I know, what do you want me to do about it? Not use it? I want you to understand why this matters. It's not about one dance move. It's about a pattern. You know how many times I've seen white performers take what black artists created and get credit for it? How many times I've watched someone like you take something from someone like me, and the world acts like you invented it. I'm not trying to steal from you. Maybe not consciously. But that's what happens. You perform that move on your special. Millions of people see it, and they think, wow, Elvis is such an innovator. Meanwhile, I've been doing it for 3 years and nobody gives me credit because the white mainstream doesn't pay attention to what happens in black music until white performers bring it to them. Elvis sat down on the edge of the stage. He looked tired. You're right, about all of it, and I'm sorry. I should have known better. I should have asked where the choreography came from. But you didn't, because you didn't think you had to. Because you're Elvis Presley, and you're used to taking what you want. That's not fair, isn't it? Be honest with me, Elvis. How much of what made you famous came from black artists? Your sound, your style, your moves, how much of it is really yours versus how much you took from people like Little Richard, Big Mama Thornton, Arthur Crudup? Elvis was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. A lot of it, maybe most of it. But I never claimed I invented rock and roll. I've always said I was influenced by black musicians. Influenced by or built your career on. There's a difference. Influence is when someone inspires you to create your own thing. What you did, what you're still doing, is taking their things and making money off it while they stay in obscurity. I didn't create the system that works that way. No, but you benefit from it. And you could choose not to participate in it, but you do. Because it's easier, because it's profitable, because you can. Elvis stood up and walked to the mirror, stared at his reflection for a moment, then turned back to Brown. What do you want from me? I want you to acknowledge where that move came from on the special. I want you to say, this next move I learned from watching James Brown. I want credit. You want me to credit you on national television? Yes. That's going to look weird, like I'm admitting I copied you. You did copy me. But if I say it on the show, it undermines the whole performance. It makes me look like I don't have my own ideas. You don't. Not for that move anyway. You have Michael's idea, which was my idea that he stole. Elvis paced the studio. Brown could see him wrestling with it. The pride of admitting he'd copied someone. The embarrassment of acknowledging it publicly. The damage it might do to his comeback narrative. This special was supposed to prove he was still relevant, still dangerous, still the king. Admitting he'd stolen a move from James Brown would undermine that whole story. But more than that, Elvis was wrestling with something deeper. Brown could see it in his face, the uncomfortable recognition that Brown was right, that this wasn't about one move, that Elvis's entire career had been built on taking from black artists, that the system had rewarded him for it, that he'd benefited enormously from something deeply unfair. On the faces of white musicians who genuinely loved black music, but were slowly realizing they'd participated in its theft. The cognitive dissonance of loving something while simultaneously stealing from the people who created it. The guilt that came with understanding you'd been given credit for innovation when really you'd just been given access. Finally, Elvis stopped pacing. He looked at Brown directly, and for the first time, in the conversation, there was no defensiveness in his eyes. Just something that looked like genuine remorse. I'll cut it from the special. What? The move. I won't perform it. I'll have Michael come up with something else. That way I'm not stealing from you, and I'm not humiliating myself on national TV by admitting I copied someone. That's your solution? Just pretend this conversation never happened? What else do you want? You want credit, but you don't want me to perform the move. You want me to acknowledge I took from black artists, but you're angry when I try to make it right by not using what I took. What exactly would make you happy? Brown thought about it. Elvis had a point. If Elvis cut the move, Brown would get nothing. If Elvis performed it with credit, it would feel hollow. I want you to understand something, Brown said finally. Every time you take from a black artist without credit, you participate in cultural theft. And you're talented enough that you don't need to. You could create your own style, but it's easier to take ours. Elvis's jaw tightened. You think I don't work hard? I think you perform what others created. And when you don't acknowledge them, you're not just stealing their work, you're stealing their legacy. In 50 years, people will remember Elvis, but forget James Brown. That's not just unfair. It's dishonest to history. You think being poor in Mississippi, growing up in a shotgun shack, watching my twin brother die at birth, you think that was easy? I didn't say you had it easy. I said you had it easier than me. You're white in a country that values white people. You can walk into places I can't walk into. You can get record deals I can't get. You can appeal to audiences that won't listen to me. That's not your fault, but it's reality. And when you use that advantage to take from artists who don't have those advantages, you're making the problem worse." Elvis sat down again, put his head in his hands. "I don't know what you want me to do. I want you to think about it. Really think about it. Every time you're about to perform something, ask yourself, where did this come from? Did I create this or did I take it? And if I took it, am I giving credit to the person who created it? That's all. Just be conscious of it." And the move for the special? Brown thought about it. Keep the move. Perform it on your special. But know that you didn't create it. Know that it came from me. And maybe someday, when you're giving an interview and someone asks about your influences, you mention it. You say, "I learned a lot from watching James Brown." Not because I'm forcing you to, but because it's true. You're letting me use it? I can't stop you. You're going to do your special whether I like it or not. You're going to perform whatever moves you want. I can't control that. All I can do is make sure you know where it came from, and hope that knowing makes you think twice next time. Elvis stood up, walked over to Brown, extended his hand. "Thank you. For saying something. For not letting it slide." Brown shook his hand. "Don't thank me. Just do better." "I will. I mean that." They stood there for a moment. Two men who had both changed American music. Both products of the South. Both shaped by poverty and hunger and the desperate need to prove themselves. Different in so many ways, but connected by the music they loved and the system they navigated. "Can I ask you something?" Elvis said. "What?" "If I do credit you someday, not on the special, but in an interview or something, would that be enough? Would that make up for taking the move without permission?" "No, but it would be a start. The thing is, Elvis, this isn't about one move. It's about a culture of taking. Rock and roll wouldn't exist without black musicians. Blues, gospel, rhythm and blues, all of that came from us. And white performers built careers on it without acknowledging where it came from. You're part of that tradition, and I'm asking you to break from that tradition. To be the guy who says, I owe everything to the black artists who came before me. Not just in private, in public. Repeatedly. Even if it hurts my image. Even if it makes people see me as less original. Especially then. Because that's when it means something. When you're willing to sacrifice something to tell the truth." Elvis nodded slowly. "I'll think about it. I promise I'll think about it." The comeback special aired in December 1968. Elvis performed the sequence Brown had created. He didn't credit Brown on the show. Brown watched it at home with his wife, saw Elvis execute his moves perfectly, saw the audience go wild, saw the reviews the next day calling Elvis a revolutionary performer. It stung. Of course it stung. But 3 months later, in a Rolling Stone interview, Elvis said something that surprised everyone in the music industry. "People call me the king of rock and roll," Elvis told the reporter. "But I didn't invent rock and roll. I learned it from black musicians. Arthur Crudup taught me how to sing the blues. Big Mama Thornton showed me what passion sounded like. And James Brown taught me how to move. I've taken more from them than I can ever repay. If I'm king of anything, it's because they built the kingdom and let me live in it. I owe them everything. And I think it's time people knew that." The quote made headlines. Some fans were angry, accused Elvis of diminishing his own achievements. Others praised him for his honesty. But within the music community, especially among black artists, it was recognized for what it was. A rare moment of a white performer publicly acknowledging the debt they owed. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't everything Brown had asked for. It didn't undo decades of cultural theft. It didn't make up for all the black artists who died in poverty while white performers got rich copying their work. But it was something, an acknowledgement, a public recognition that what Elvis had achieved was built on the foundation of black artistry. When someone showed Brown the Rolling Stone quote, he smiled. It's a start, he said. Not enough, but a start. At least he's thinking about it. At least he knows. Years later, someone asked Brown if he regretted letting Elvis use the move without fighting harder for credit. I don't regret it at all, Brown said. The fight wasn't about one move. It was about making Elvis conscious of exactly what he was taking from me. And I genuinely think that conversation changed him. Not as much as I wanted, but some. Sometimes that's all you can hope for. You plant seeds and hope they grow. Elvis didn't become perfect, but he became more aware. And awareness is where real change begins. If this story about the invisible theft that happens when one culture takes from another without credit, about the courage to confront someone more powerful, and about the long, slow, difficult work of changing how people think, moved you, share it with someone who needs to understand that inspiration requires acknowledgement. Subscribe for more stories about the moments when someone stood up for the principle, even when they couldn't control the outcome. And remember, you can't stop people from taking from you, but you can make sure they know they took it. And knowing changes everything.